Grainmaker. Welcome, everyone, to the Grainmaker Wrestling Podcast, a Prairie Proud wrestling podcast covering everything from Winnipeg to worldwide. My name is Blair Pacheco, and today I am joined by a very special guest. My guest today is a legend in not just wrestling, but Canadian wrestling worldwide. He has made a name for himself over the years, comes from a rich wrestling family. My guest today, Jacques Rougeau. Jacques, how are you doing today?
Hello, Blair. Thank you for that nice intro there. Pretty good, pretty good.
First off, I should say thank you for joining me. I truly appreciate it. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you for having me on board. It's good.
Now, we're going to talk about what you're doing currently, and it is huge, especially for independent wrestling in Canada. We're going to jump into that, but first we're going to talk about a little bit more just about your career, stuff that people might not know, and that when I was reading up on you, doing my research, that I was blown away by, and I wanted to share that with everyone listening.
All right. I hope should I be afraid or?
I don't think so. I think that I think the listeners will enjoy this.
Right.
Well, first off, I had no idea that when you first started wrestling that you had not made a name, but you had started off in Stampede Wrestling out west.
Absolutely. That was a great thing. I was, I was, like you said, I was in 4 generations of wrestling, so for me, from the day I was born, I saw a championship belt, and then I saw my father as a hero, because my father was one of the tough guys in Montreal. Aside from wrestling, my dad was a champion in Golden Glove boxing. He was doorman at a Macambo club and it was a classy, nice nightclub in Montreal that was owned by his brother, Johnny Rougeau, which was my uncle. But they were getting people like in Montreal in those days, like Chubby Checker, I'm thinking Tina Turner, and thinking that it was a big nightclub in Montreal, the Lamp. So my father was a really tough guy, because my father was the bouncer there, the guy when trouble hits the place there. My father, and it's funny because, when I think about those days now, my dad passed away a couple of years ago, but it was the saddest day of my life, I think. But anyway, when he was doorman, a lot of people don't know that, but Montreal was the door for the Marines and for the Army and for the sailors, especially, that would come around the world. They would come up St. Lawrence River all the way up, and they'd come, and they'd been on the boat for 25 days. They hadn't seen any woman or nothing. So when they got in the nightclubs, with a few drinks in them, they got pretty wild. But there was a lot of tough guys. And my father was really the one. And it's funny because when I traveled in wrestling around the world, you talk about independent wrestlings, and federations, but in the old days, it was like that too. All around the world, it wasn't the WWF, it was all independent circuits. And every time I went to wrestle starting 77, including Calgary, and when I started, everybody would talk about my dad, and Stu Hart was the first guy I talked to and booked myself when I was young. I was like 17 years old when I called him, and I'll never forget that. I don't know if you personally know Stu Hart or a little bit about him.
I know a fair amount. I've read books about him, and you see the documentaries and you hear stories. So, I'm aware of him.
So he was a character. Well, I'll tell you, he was a real character. And then, so the first day, I'm 17 years old, and I wrestled a couple of backyard wrestling shows, around my house, and stuff like that. But I was into wrestling since I was 4 years old. So I thought I was a pretty good wrestler then, and I wanted to hit the territories. And my father looked at me and he says, Jesus Christ, my nickname was Bones, by the way. I mean, I was about 170 pounds on a whip. And, so it's like, so my father would always look at me when I'd say, hey, Dad, I'm ready to go on the road. I'd ready to go on the road. And he'd look at me and said, you're too skinny, put some weight on you, work out a bit. So finally I couldn't take it anymore. So I used our name. The Rougeau name was the big name in the east of Canada. So I used my name and I called Stu Hart. I got the number from somebody, can't remember who. Anyway, I got the number and I called him, and I asked him. I said, Well, I called him, and when he answered, it was so funny. I'll never forget that for the rest of my life, because my first promoter I'm calling now to go on the road as a professional wrestler. And he answers the phone, and I said, Mr. Hart. He says, yes. So I say, well, Mr. Hart, I said, my name is Jacques Rougeau, and I'd like to go work in your territory, and are you one of those famous Rougeaus there? And I said, well, my dad's famous, and my uncle Johnny and my great uncle Eddie Auger. Yeah, tough guy there, and your dad there, tough guy there. Yeah, says, I think I could use you. Yeah, and that was my first meeting with Stu Hart. It was like, holy shit, this guy is weird, but he talks weird, and, but what a great man, so I went to Calgary, and Brett was driving the bus at the time for Stampede Wrestling. He wasn't even wrestling yet, Brett, and which became the best wrestler out of Canada altogether, but he was driving the bus. And so I went there, and it was so funny. They took me in like he had a lot of respect for the Rougeau family. Although we never worked together, my dad never worked for them. It was always on the West Coast for them and the East Coast for us. Yeah. But he had this respect for the business. So when I went to Calgary, he took me in like I was his son. So we had the loops that we traveled by bus, and everything, and wasn't making much money, but I was having a great time. And I remember my mom, who I went to see her when I left the first time. I said, Mom, Dad doesn't want me to go. So he says, can you lend me $500? I need to pay my first week. My mom gave me the money for me to take off. And it was so funny, because when I got to Calgary, the first Sunday I was there, I worked the first week, and I was staying, Jesus Christ, I was staying at a dump there in the St. Regis Hotel, where I'll street there. It was like a little cheap place, but that's all I could afford. I was only making like $250 a week. I had to pay trans, food, and hotel. So anyway, long story short is, when Sunday would come, Stu would always ask me, why don't you come and have dinner with us there, or lunch at noon, and I was so happy, because I was all by myself, and I said, yeah. And when I got there, Jesus Christ, I think there was about 15 kids in the house. There was about 20 cats, but it was like amazing. And anyway, I always thought he did that, because he liked me and he respected the Rougeau family. But then I realized that every time, we'd finish eating, a couple hours later or something, he'd always tell me, we got a dungeon there. We got a gym downstairs there. Maybe you'd like to come down there. And I had heard about it. That's where they stretch guys. That's where they really put guys to work there, if you want, and they stiffen them up a little bit. So I was already aware. So every time he'd come up to me and he'd say that, I said, well, Stu, I'd like to do that, but I have something planned this afternoon. Yeah, but that was a great place to start my business,
Well, when you're 17 years old, I mean, it's a lot different than now. Back then you don't have the same luxuries. You're not as connected with everyone. So when you're 17, you pack up and you go halfway across Canada. Being able to go into an environment like that, where it's so friendly and welcoming, it must have made a world of difference for someone like yourself.
It sure did, I remember the great workers that were there, but most of all, what came out of that was, I went there in 77, and then I spent like 4 months, came back home, and then the next year I went back. I was, because I really enjoyed it, and he liked my work. I was young, but he liked my work, so he brought me back again. So I was doing the first matches all the time. I made it up to the middle there. I wrestled John Foley and a couple of guys for the light heavyweight title. So I tasted that a little bit. Never won it, but I tasted it. A match in there. But I was going up in my career slowly. And out of there in 78, when I went back for the second time, I met a guy named Louis Larance, the farmer Louis Larance. And he connected me with Mexico. Okay. So I went from there to Mexico City. And when I went to Mexico City, you talk about an experience. I'm 18 years old. I'm skinny. I'm putting a little pecs on there, a couple of biceps, but no, I'm really skinny. But what an experience that was, going to Mexico.
I mean, by 18, you've already done more things that, friends and other people in wrestling could only dream of.
Well, to be honest with you, I always say in life, I always said all my life I was lucky. I was really lucky. I was lucky to have the Rougeau name because that opened so many doors for me. But I was on the other part. I always say today, I'm lucky, but you make your own luck in life. Like, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't go out in bars. I was consistently trying to learn something new. I was watching all the other matches before me, or mostly after me, because I was mostly on first. But anyway, and picking up knowledge like that. And when I went to Mexico, Jesus Christ, you think it was hard going to Calgary at 17. Try to go at 18, where you land in Mexico City, where they don't speak English. It's not like landing in Acapulco there or Puerto Vallarta, where it's all tourists. When you land in Mexico City, in the industrial part, of Mexico, I had to learn and then someone would say, comida, like, I'd say, yeah, comida. And then I'd go to a restaurant, everything was spicy for me over there. And then it was like, and then I'd say something like, ugh, like it's no good, but I didn't have the words. So I go, ugh. So then I'd say, I'd go ahead and I'd say, and then she said, no me gusta, no me gusta. And then I'd say, no me gusta, no me gusta. So then I figured out that me gusta means I like it, So I learned the language like that, and hotel, and thank God there was some similarity with French and Spanish. There's like some words that they define. You could almost find the word in there when you talk, but they have extra syllables and different. So that was rough. And then when I got on the bus to travel with the guys, it was like, I thought it was rough in Calgary, going from Saskatoon to Regina and then going back the same night, all the way to Calgary to be at Stampede on Friday night. We had like a 10, 12-hour drive from Regina, but that was nothing. When I got to Mexico, it was like 30 miles an hour with the buses, and everybody's speaking Spanish. None of the wrestlers spoke English except Raul Mata, who I remember him once in a while. He'd send a word to me in English to see if I'm still alive. But apart from that, I wasn't part of this world, and it was so hard. I missed so much home, but what a great experience, because first of all, the tag team situation is completely different over there. It's like they don't make tags like us. When you tag in and out of the ring, it's like it's a free for all. It's like when one guy jumps in the ring, there's a high spot, the guy rolls out, and then it's the other one's already in. And most of the time at the beginning, I was like, hey, ref, he didn't tag. And they were saying, and they kept telling me, Roro, no tag, Roro, no tag. And everybody was like off the top rope, backflips. It was so spectacular, and I stole some moves. And when I got back home at the age of 18, people would look at me like at Montreal. They would say, "Holy shit, that's a nice move, and that's a nice move." But I was always out there making my luck, going out to perform there and doing that. It was and the other thing too about traveling, especially in Mexico, I think of Salt Lake City. I think of a few places I went where the altitude was very high. When you go to Mexico City, it's like 4,200 feet high everywhere. Here, that's in the mountains. When we're in Canada, you go up those mountains. But there, you're in the ring. So I was always blown up, and it was so hard. But then when I came back from there and I wrestled here, wow, I could go 25 minutes nonstop and just bum. So you learn a lot and you go through a lot of things. But what a great experience. And the last thing I'll say about Mexico in 78 was I got really depressed at the end, because when we'd finished the shows, we'd travel another 10 hours by bus, and then you'd look at the side of the window and you could almost fall thousands of feet. It was always up in the mountains. And all the boys, they would drink like crazy in Mexico. And so they were all on the bus, and laughing and having, and I couldn't hear nothing. I didn't understand nothing. And I was paranoid a bit, I was young, and I always thought they were talking about me. And it was a rough time there. And I remember going back to Mexico City, I was coming back from Guadalajara. And when I got to Mexico City, I hadn't spoke to my family in 2 months. Because it's not like today. When there, it cost a lot of money to call, and you have to call from Mexico to United States to Canada. It was the connections. It wasn't like today with a phone. You had to make 2-3 operators before I get the call, and it was expensive. And I wasn't making a lot of money, not at all. So I remember calling my mom, you know. It was so amazing. I called the phone and my mom answered, and she said, she says, hello. And I said, and I went to say mom, but I started almost crying. I couldn't say mom. I was like, mom, you know, and I was so sad. It was amazing. And then, and because my dad had told me before I left from Calgary, I told him, hey, Dad, I'm going to Mexico. Like, hey, like up yours, you know, you thought I was too young and this. So like, I'm going to Mexico now, you know, he was my father, because he said I couldn't do it. And I was the kind of guy, if he said you couldn't do it, I'd do it. Yeah. So anyway, but he had told me before I left, he said, son, don't go to Mexico. It's going to be rough. It's going to be tough. It's not like in the Canada or in the States. And I said, don't worry, Dad, don't worry. So finally, after 2 months, I called for the first time. And then it was so horrible. You know, my mom finally, you know, I cried. And, you know, I was in my room alone. Thank God no one saw the big man there. But anyway, all that to say that it was hard. And then finally, when my mom, you know, in English, I was called Jimmy, by the way. In French, it was Jacques Rougeau, like my dad. I was Jacques Jr. But around the house, my mom was English, so it was always Jimmy. So in French, I was Jacques in school and my friends, but in English, it was Jimmy. So I remember she telling me when I first called, and she said, Jimmy? And when she said Jimmy, she just broke my heart. You know, it was like, holy shit, and I couldn't talk. And it took me about 5-10 seconds to get my breath back. And then she was saying, is that you, Jimmy? Is that you? Yeah, it's me. It's me. But what a trip that was. Yeah.
Well, how long did you end up staying in Mexico?
About 3 months.
3 months?
1 month after I talked to my mom, I couldn't take it anymore. But it was like, you know why? It's because for 2 months, I was traveling a lot. And after the third month, the promoter, Salvador Ruteroff, he started telling me, and I got to put you in context there, that in Mexico City, after 2 months, I found a restaurant that was called Super Leche, like the big glass of milk, Super Leche. And I went there on one day, and I was always by myself, and I walked into that place, and I get a menu, and this cute little girl, she comes to me, and she spoke English. And she said to me, she says, you're a tourist, huh? You're a tourist. And I said, yeah, but when she spoke to me, it was like, holy shit. I just connected with Earth, you know, planet Earth. And then she said to me, one moment. So she comes back and she has an English menu. And there was the first time in 2 months I saw the English menu. Holy mackerel. Like, and then after that, I became nostalgic, and then from that day on, every time I'd come back from a loop, I'd always end up in Mexico for 2-3 days. I'd call her right away, you know, I'd go see her right away. And finally I started dating her. And, but the thing about it is about 2 weeks after I started doing that, we get to Guadalajara on the Friday. So I know after the bus, we're going back for the weekend in Mexico City for a day off Saturday, and Sunday, the big show, and then back on the road again Monday. So after my Guadalajara show, the promoter comes to see me. He says, hey, Roro, he says, you stay Guadalajara now this weekend. You stay. You don't go to Mexico. He says, you go up the stairs in the arena and you go down. Up the stairs, you go down. He says, you have no cardio. I did it for 2 freaking weeks or 3 weeks, and then I broke. You know, and then what I did is, like, he told me the third show, like after 2 months and 3 weeks, he told me, Roro, you don't go to Mexico. And I said, okay. And I sneaked out and I got onto the bus, and they didn't have cellular phones then. You know, there's no cellular phones, so they couldn't call the bus and say, hey, drop him off. You know, he's got to stay. So once the bus took off, I was going like, this is it, man. So it's like I got in Mexico and I packed my stuff and I went to the airport. I bought a ticket. I had enough to buy and I went home. That's how I left. I left like in a real cheap way, but I didn't tell anybody I was leaving or nothing. But it was like, I got to get out of Dodge. You know, like, yeah. So but what an experience, you know.
Well, you had mentioned, you know, it was the Hearts out west and, you know, the Rougeaus out east. The whole scene out in Quebec, what was that like for people who might not know?
Well, it was like, it was really hot because every weekend, you know, we were on TV, and, you know, we were like mega stars, like, you know, and we had Edward Carpentier, the great Edward Carpentier, who was doing the commentaries. You know, and he'd always finish his Sunday shows at 11 o'clock in the morning, like, à la semaine prochaine, si Dieu le veut. Like, you know, see you next week if God's will, and he'd always finish his show. And everybody got attached to his French accent from France, and they loved Edouard for spectacular backflips off the top rope. He's one of the first one who did it. So we were like, and as a matter of fact, I'll tell you how bad it was, or how good it was for us, but how bad it was for some people. The churches on Sunday, they stopped doing their churches at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings because there was no one going to the church anymore. They would go like at 9 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, and at noon. But 11 o'clock, the priest was there sitting by himself. He should have brought his TV. He'd probably be watching wrestling too, because it was so popular wrestling, in our days in the 70s and the 80s, the early 80s. So that's how popular it was, and I'd walk into a shopping center, a restaurant, and they'd look at me like Michael Jackson just came in. But that's how hot it was, so it was great. It was a great era, a great time.
Well, before, we were talking, I did some, I was reading up on, the overall vibe of the Quebec scene, what it was like. And one thing that I was really enthralled by was you had a lot of the, wrestlers. You had, Nick Bockwinkel from AWA come out east. You had, Abdullah the Butcher, who I know you had matches with.
Oh, yes.
And it really had it was Quebec versus the world. And I think that was really something special.
It was an international flavor at home. And it's funny because they had a guy like Hans Schmidt, a big German guy who lived about 40 miles from Montreal, but he was disguised as a German guy. And then you had all these characters that my dad and my uncle created, like Abdullah the Butcher. He came from an hour away from Montreal in Ontario on the border. That's where he came from. And my father and my uncle put a sheet on his head and made him turn into Abdullah the Butcher, which from Sudan, so you had all these local wrestlers who would have their hidden life, but they were from another world. But there were some few international guys. I'm thinking like Bobo Brazil. I'm thinking of Igor the Strongman. I'm thinking of the Sheik from Detroit, the real Eddie Farhat, the original Sheik. I'm thinking of, who was it? The McGuire twins, the 640-pound guys that were coming with a mini bike, a little bike where you couldn't see the bike when they'd come to the ring with you. They were so big. Yeah. And then, but you had a lot of guys that had the Fidel and Raul Castillo, the Castillo brothers that would come from Puerto Rico. Carlos Colon, who owned the business for so long, he came wrestle for my dad a lot. Don Serrano. So you had all these international guys that they would fly in to feed the local talent. And then everybody, like you said, it's so well said. It was Montreal against the world. Quebec against the world, and they were so proud. And of course, my dad being the booker and my uncle the owner, well, the Quebec people always managed to win. The battles, not every battles, but they'd win the war. So if they had a long-term deal there where it ended up with a loser leave match or something like that, when my father would be the hero and my uncle too. So everybody was so proud of the Rougeaus. So they knew how to feed the Quebec fans. And the Quebec wrestlers. It was a great time, of course.
You mentioned might not necessarily winning the battle, but ending up winning the war. And I think that could be very well spoke with the feud with the Garvins.
Holy mackerel! Because
I know the Saint Jean Baptiste massacre. Yes.
Yeah, that was something. You know what? What was great about that? That was considered one of the best angles in tag team that ever came in the history of Montreal. Because my brother Raymond and myself, who became the fabulous Rougeau brothers in the WWF and all that, but we wrestled locally. Every time I'd come back from trips and tours, and Raymond was such a great grounded wrestler. He wasn't tall, but he was the basic of our team. I was the high flyer, he was the basic. And he was more mature than me. He was 5 years older than me. He was the first one of the Rougeaus of the sons that came in my era, like the third generation. So he was the first one that my Uncle Johnny and my father took on. And we had built a credibility as so strong as the Rougeau brothers. And we'd always worked off of that. Not only we worked that as a gimmick, blood is thicker than water, but we'd always work in the ring as I didn't have, we do a high spot, we do something in the ring, 2-3 guys, and I would never have to turn around to see if Raymond was there. I knew he was there. And that's just the relationship we had. And there came the Garvins, Jimmy Garvin and Ronnie Garvin, the brothers, the Garvin brothers who came from the States. So it was like the American brothers are going to try to beat the Quebec brothers, you know. And then they had their manager, Precious, a girl that was very beautiful. She had a can of spray. And so on that angle that you're talking about, they came to the Montreal Forum. It was a big, big event. And there was a buildup, almost like the Boss Man and me and then the cops situation in WWF. It was the same thing for them. And that's the brothers. They were always beating everybody. And they were always on their promo saying, we want those Rougeau brothers one day. We want those. And we were doing the same thing. We were beating everybody, all the heels, the bad guys. And we were saying, we'll take you on, Garvins. If you want to come on, we'll take you on. So we built that story. And when finally we got to the Montreal Forum, 20,000 people, they started announcing us. But before they even announced us, the match never started. Precious came in front of me with her can of spray there, and she went, shh, and she blinded me with the spray. So I was like out of the picture. I was on the floor selling like I never sold in my life, you know, like, oh, my eyes are burned. I was screaming out loud, and everybody was like going wild. They were so pissed, and the match had never started. So Raymond got jumped by the two Garvins, and he fought like crazy. He fought them both, and then finally they got the best out of him. They were two. And here comes my old dad. Here he comes into the ring, and he's got to come to the rescue, and they beat him up. And then Jimmy Garvin took a camel clutch or a Boston crab on my dad. And Ronnie Garvin went up the top rope and he dropped a knee drop right in his back. And they put him on the stretcher and stuff. And they just left. And there was never. So the announcer finished by when they cleared the ring. And I was on the floor still screaming like you know, the end of the world. And Raymond was beat up on the floor. We were all juiced up. I was full of blood. He was full of blood. My dad was on a stretcher. And they were looking at the people like, you know, the Garvin brothers and the Garvin brothers. Man, did they have heat. So then the announcer picks up the mic and he says, well, ladies and gentlemen, there's not going to be a match tonight. 20,000 people. And then we came back a month later of the 24th of June, the Quebec's birthday it's like almost the 4th of July in the States. Or I know, I mean, in Canada, it's the 1st of July, I believe. But in the States, it's the 4th of July. In Quebec, it's the 24th of June. And it's the big Independence Day with the fleur de lis and everything. So we came back as the Saint Jean Baptiste massacre. Like we came back and you give me goosebumps just thinking about it, because I was such in great shape. I had put myself, then I was mature. I was like 23, 24 years old. I had picks, I had deltoids, I had traps, I had 19-inch arms, and I was the golden boy, like, you know, the blonde hair, you know, not blonde, but dark blonde and light brown, like just, but you know, I looked at my best then. And when I came into the ring, boy, that there was no bell either that time. We just jumped them and we kicked their ass the whole time. And the 20,000 people that were there a month ago, they were all back, and we sold out so much in advance. Like, you know, people wanted to come see the massacre. We did the promos for it. That was probably the best angle I've ever done in my life.
I think it's one that a lot of people might not know about, but it deserves the recognition as a standalone in Canadian wrestling history for just how impactful it was.
What a souvenir, I'll tell you. For you to give me goosebumps like 35 years later, you know, and I'm still thinking about it, like, wow, what a great adventure that was.
Well, I know in your time, you know, because you had wrestled in St. Louis and, you know, around that area, I know you had actually shared the ring with a Manitoba legend from Shoal Lake, Bulldog Bob Brown.
Bob Brown.
Yes.
Bob Brown, right?
So I know he's a name that most people familiar with the Winnipeg wrestling scene or Manitoba wrestling scene are familiar with. But for yourself, you know, you're sharing the ring with, you know, I think I could say a bit of a hard ass, you know, with his persona. But what was that like for you?
Well, you know what? I got to be honest with you, and that's my way of talking. I didn't know he was from Canada. I didn't know Bob Brown was from Canada. So it was like, for me, it was just like a tough guy in the States and all that. The cauliflower ears, you know, that he's been on the mat a few times. He's got stretched a few times, and he stretched a lot. But he had a reputation. But you know what? I didn't know him like that, because when I got there, he was so nice to me. He was so nice in the dressing room. He was laughing all the time. He was the guy like the Owen Hart of those days. He was so nice. And, so I never knew that he was that tough guy you're talking about. I never knew that. You're just teaching me that now. I thought he was just an old timer with cauliflower ears, but the greatest heart, the biggest heart, and all the guys that was there. He was with Bob Geigel at the time, and he was booking for Kansas City, St. Louis, and I was in that territory. And actually, that was the first time that I won a tag team title with Butch Reed. He was we were the salt and pepper team. He was black and I was white, and they used to call us the salt and pepper team. And then Bob Brown, he gave me those belts, for the first time on the road that I became a tag team champion. And so I have nothing but great memories of Bob Brown. He helped me a lot. And I was a little arrogant, a little cocky. I was young. I was like a stud, and I had a lot of things to learn in those days that I didn't know, but outside the ring, and he was always coming up to me like, don't worry, kid, don't worry, kid. You worry too much. You worry too much. He was a great counselor, if you'd like, or I don't know how to say that, a mentor.
Yeah. Now I know, like, my first, the first time I saw you was, when you were part of the fabulous Rougeaus. You went on to do the Mountie. And I think one thing that always stood out to me was your, how expressive you were, like your overall persona. You magnified that to the umpth degree, and it always came across. I went back the other day and I was showing my fiance some of the Mountie vignettes, and watching them now, it's just like, like back then, as a kid, I'm like, oh, I don't like them. But now you're like, this is incredible stuff. This is great.
What I always attributed to the success that even when I had 20 years of wrestling school, and all the students that I had in my school, I always told them, if you want people to believe what you're doing, you have to believe it yourself. And if you believe it yourself and you act like you're really in that circumstance, if you get in the ring and the guy goes to grab your leg or something, you don't just keep walking. You act surprised. Like, oh, you gotta make everything that's in there like it was real. And when you're fighting, you're doing your comeback. You gotta do like you're fighting for the last breath you have in you, like, and some guys were just doing the motions. Where I explained to them, if that will make a difference. Like, take Kevin Owen. Kevin Owen was one of my students for 4 years, and I took him at 14 years old. So I had time. He didn't have bad habits when he came to my school. I had time to make him what I wanted him to be, and showed him everything that he could learn. And not only in the ring, he had great ability in the ring. But I showed him different things, the promos, and I showed him sometimes in wrestling you hear that expression, less is more.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people, they just go 1,000 things in the ring, but it doesn't mean nothing. You might as well just do 3 things, but make the people believe that what just happened. And that was my strength. I had a lot of, and it's funny that you say that, because over the years I figured out there, Blair, that I'm kind of a special person in a way. I am. I don't mean in a good way. I mean, like, you have normal people here and you have autistic people here, and I'm probably about right here, just almost normal. And what that means that what a normal person in life would take in and let go, me, when I take it in, it was like, wow. And when I let it go, it was like, oh. I always had deep feelings of every emotion that I lived. And many times, because I believed so much in my career and into my characters, that I had a hard time, like, realizing, hey, is this real or not? Not as far as hurting anybody, but just like things would happen around me, and it would take me a lot of time to analyze it. I'd have to think about it 2-3 times to realize the deepness of what's going on around, where people, like a gray zone, if you'd like. For me, it was always black or white, and there was no gray. I couldn't just be stable. I was always a wow or oh. And so that played against me in life for many things, like in the dressing room and encounters with people, but it played in my favor in my character. Because in my character, it would come out like you said, you'd look at me and without bragging, I was believable in everything I did, because I believed it myself. I sometimes, like, I was in the ring, and some guys, example, they were. I'll take an example. I'm getting beat up on the floor, kicks and punches. And next thing you know, I'm kicking his ass. It's like, it don't work like that.
Yeah.
In my mind, it was like, I'm getting beat up, and then I'll desperately give a shot, boom, and then I'll still die. I'll still keep hurting. And the guy comes at me again, and I'll roll around. I'll avoid him, and then he tries to grab me again, and then you see, I make it realistic. And with my attitude and my mind, because I was that special person, and really was, it was easy for me to act like it was real. So I'd always do, like, if I was sitting in the fans, if I was sitting in the chair and I saw what was going on in the ring, what I was doing, would I believe it or not? Would I make it convincing? Or so that helped me a lot in my life, and as far as my business.
Well, I mean, one thing that always stood out to me, one of my favorite times was back in 1992. You had yourself as the Mountie, you had Bret Hart, and you had Roddy Piper, all sort of kind of feuding at once. But I think what at the time we didn't realize was that you had 3 Canadian wrestlers. They didn't portray it that way because, they would always say Roddy was from Scotland, but you had, Winnipeg born or Winnipeg raised Roddy Piper, yourself from Montreal, and Bret from Calgary. And I think you look at that now and you just see the impression that Canadian wrestling had on that.
Oh my God, and I didn't even know Roddy Piper was from Winnipeg. You're teaching me something. I thought he was from the States, but with a disguise from Scotland. I didn't know he was Canadian. See, and I was with him all the time. So it just goes to show there's so much things in the business that you could miss, because of the characters. But one thing I do remember is having that position to take the belt from Bret and giving it to Roddy Piper on a pay-per-view. I don't think I was deserving to be one of those talents up there, and I had a lot of shots like that in the WWF where I ended up being tag team champions. I ended up turning Sid Vicious babyface in one night. I worked with Randy Macho Man, with Miss Elizabeth overseas, because the Mountie was strong overseas because of all they have another kind of Mounties, over there where they're in front of their castle and they can't smile, they can't talk, and they can't move. And I would do it on purpose. I did so many promos. I'd go as the Mountie, I'd get in front of him, I'd try to make him laugh. Or I'd try to make it, but all this to say that I think there was also a problem between Bret dropping the belt to Piper. So the fact that I only had it 2 days, by the way. I was the shortest lived intercontinental title holder that ever happened. That was me. but it's funny because 30 years later, I do Comic Cons and everything, and all the pictures, the dolls, they all have the belt, and I only had it for 2 days. But I think there was a problem between the two. I don't know what the bottom line is, but I know that I was so happy that Vince chose me to be the one who switches the titles, So if I always say to myself up to this day, I look at characters and everything, and I'm a great movie fan. And I always say to create a great Batman, you need a greater Joker. You must have a big heel that makes sense to make a big baby face, And so if they chose me in all those spots, it's like, for me, it was a compliment. I look at this today and I said, hey, I did have a few great spots in there, which is complimentary to my career.
And I mean, the other day I had rewatched the match where it was you and Piper, I think from Saturday night's main event, and with the
anti-shock.
Yes.
That was my idea. I got to tell you this.
That was great.
I didn't want to do a job, with my own stick, my electric stick, like in the middle. I was trying to think, I was going to do any way they wanted, but I was trying to think of a way where I didn't lose too much credibility. And so I thought of this. I said, wow. So I went to see Vince, and actually, I don't know if I went to see Rowdy or Vince, but I went to tell him, I said, hey, would you mind wearing a vest under your shirt there, and when I zap you with my stick there, I think I got you beat and everything, and you just turn around and kick my ass and beat me right there in the middle. I'm so surprised. And then he grabs his shirt and he takes it off, and then it says anti-shock on the vest, like almost like a policeman that has an anti-bullet thing there, and a vest. So it was like I was happy because they used that thought I had, that idea, and people forgot about my loss. It was so entertaining that they forgot that I got beat. They just enjoyed the time that they saw that, So it's all good.
Now, before we get into what you're currently doing, that is going to, I think, it's going to change independent wrestling, especially in Canada. I'm going to play a little something just for everyone to hear, and then we're going to jump right into talking about that. So I'm just going to cue that up.
Hey everybody, this is QT Marshall from All Elite Wrestling and one of the owners of one of the best training facilities in the world, the Nightmare Factory. And I wanted to give a quick shout out to Nick, who runs a Rise podcast, and this evening has Jacques Rougeau on there. And Jacques has a great project in the works. I'm excited about it. In fact, the Nightmare Factory has even told Mr. Rougeau that the winners of this project will receive a special 3-month, 12-week scholarship to the Nightmare Factory, which has seen athletes from all over the world come train with us. And honestly, some have signed contracts with major wrestling organizations in the world, such as AEW and stuff like that. So I'm excited for this project. I think it's a great for aspiring professional wrestlers all throughout Canada. I support it, and I hope that if all works out well, I'll be able to come up to Montreal and partake in being one of the judges of this special project. So good luck to everyone. Just wanted to say hello. Just wanted to let everybody know that it is me, and we are offering this scholarship to the winners. So you can read into it whatever you want, but you've heard it straight from the horse's mouth. It is true. And again, good luck to everyone, and hopefully see you soon.
Now, I'm not Nick, but Jacques, what is going on?
I'm not, I'm so blessed. Jesus Christ. It's I had this crazy idea with my girlfriend, and there's this TV show in Montreal that's called Star Academy, which is for the singers. And so they started this thing about 10 years ago, maybe, or 15 years ago, I can't remember. It was like they're taking all these singers, amateur singers, and they do a show, and every week they would eliminate them. Like, and to make the last one where she has her own record deal and she has her own thing, sings with Celine Dion and everything like that. It was the big deal. And so I said to myself, I said, wow, what if we did that with wrestling? And you know what's great about this thing? So now we're end up with, if you go on wrestling-academy.ca, if you have a chance to put the link there at the end, people must go see this. It's amazing. And it happened so slowly, but it happened. So we recruited 42 talent, women and men, from all the way to Vancouver, Jordy Taylor, to Chad Daniels in Winnipeg, to Chris Dillon in Halifax, and to AC Coca in Toronto, and all these great talent. We got so many guys in the middle in Hamilton. I'm trying to think of all the names, the Jesse B. There's thinking of Jesus. There's so many, and I'm so impressed because it's the first time in Canada that, we all have our own territories, we all have our own provinces, and everybody does their own little thing. Yep. And I managed to go get a lot of talent from every territory and put it all together in this schmoz. And then what's going to happen is I found 4 sponsors who, as we eliminate them week by week, we're starting this in May, by the way. Okay. And so as we're eliminating 4 wrestlers, female and male, every time we do a show, the last 4, I found 4 sponsors around here, Quebec, that would give $5,000 each to the winners. Oh, so wow. I'm going like, wow, I used my notoriety and people were helping me, and thank the Lord. And then I said to myself, I need to find something, that's going to put a little incentive, like to get everybody from. So first of all, we got the flights. We got sponsors to pay the flights from everybody around the country. I found sponsors with my girlfriend. We got hotels for them. And so then I said to myself, I wonder if I could get a wrestling school, a big wrestling school in the States, where they could give them just one day where I could take my 4 winners and they could live a dream of one day of being with the superstars that come and work out in and out. And the Nightmare Factory was the one chosen. So the guys that are in the AEW, they work out there, and they have the training facilities there. So QT Marshall and Cody Rhodes and Glacier, they own this thing. So I called a friend who gave me QT Marshall's number. Well, I don't know the guy. I got to tell you, I got to put everything in context for everybody. 30 years ago, when I had my falling out with Vince McMahon, I went like this. Finish wrestling. I don't want to see wrestling anymore. It was finished. I never watched wrestling. The only guys I knew was like Stone Cold because my students would go like this, or Goldberg, or the guys that were John Cena was in movies, and one of my students says, "Hey, did you see the wrestler in the movie?" And Kevin Owens, of course, was my student. But I only know that and The Rock. But I wrestled him as Marvia before, so I'd heard about him and seen him in movies and everything. But I didn't know any of the talent, so I don't know any of the talent today. People talk about sometimes CM Punk and guys like that. I don't know them. I never seen them. I don't know them. So I'm caught up in this thing where I get a phone number from a wrestling school, the Nightmare Factory, and it's QT Marshall's phone call. So I call him up and I say, "Mr. Marshall, I got this contest in Canada from one end to the other, and I got 4 winners of $5,000, but I'd like to give them a bonus. I'd like to take them down just one day, and you could evaluate them, like put them in the ring. We'll go on a vacation as tourists. We'll just go there, and you could evaluate us, like just, are they good on the mic or, in the ring, and what you could maybe give them a few incentive or a few, what I'm looking for the word there, advice. Advice. My girlfriend's beside me. She said, advice. So anyway, so that's all I'm looking for is one day. So that happens. So he says yes. But when he answers, he talks to me on the phone. He says, "Oh, Mr. Rougeau and Mr. Rougeau." I go like, holy shit. He's got respect for me, this guy. It's incredible. So he gave me that one day. So there I am, 8 months ago. This project started. And I took all my connections around the world, like the Comic-Cons I did in Europe and the tours I did in Australia and everywhere. So I call all those connections I have, and I do podcasts. And every time I do a podcast like yours today, I put that video of QT Marshall in there. So about a month ago, QT Marshall calls me up. He writes me and he says, "Jacques, what are you doing?" So I'm afraid. I'm saying, "Oh shit, he's pulling out or something, He says, "My phone at the Nightmare Factory is red." He says, "People are calling from all around the world. They want to know how they could subscribe, and now this and now that." He's hearing it from everybody around the world. So he says, "Why don't we give them a week? Just give them a week." And I went crazy. So I called everybody in my talent. I said, "Hey, we got a week." So what that means is you don't have to worry about the first day. You go there for one day, dry throat, nervous. You don't have a second chance to make a first impression, because now you got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to make up if you screw up on Monday, on the first day. So everybody's so enthused, and the media is getting behind it, and this and that. And then about 3 weeks ago, I'm doing a podcast with Nick Drosis in Montreal, a huge podcast. And I never asked nothing at QT Marshall. I never asked nothing to nobody. I'm just pushing for 8 months. And then finally I talked to QT and I said, "QT, would you mind doing a video for Nick Drosis?" I'm on his podcast tonight, but just because there's a lot of haters and a lot of people that are trying to stop my project, and they're saying that I'm saying some stuff that's not true, and so I'm going like, so he says, "Sure." So he sends me a video, and in the video, my girlfriend and I, we look at it just before we do it on the podcast, and then he says 3 months. I'm looking at the video and I'm looking at my girlfriend like, did I hear it? I rewind, I say. And he says 12 weeks, 3 months that he's going to take them for free.
Oh, wow.
So what that means now, it's like, I always said in wrestling, there's 2 things that are going to make it happen for you. Like in hockey and anything else. It's not always what you can do, it's who you know. And the second thing is like being at the right place at the right time. So now it's not going to be like one day there, "Hello, Mr. Marshall," and you're shaking in your pants. And then, or if it's 1 week, it's like, "Hello, Mr. Marshall." And then if it's 1 month, it's "Hi, QT." And then it's 2 months, it's "Hey, buddy." And then 3 months later, it's like, "Hey, I like you." And so now all the stars are going to come in from between tours. They're going to come and work out at the gym. So they're going to be with this. So now let's say Jake the Snake, who hangs around there all the time, he's going to walk in and he's not going to say, "Hey, what's your name there?" No, he's going to say, let's say, "Hi, Jeremy. How you doing today?" I'll give you an example. Or CC Galavis, or they're going to talent that's going to make it there, whoever makes it there. They're going to be friends with the superstars that I used to work with, and they're on the circuit now. So like it makes you it puts you in a position. And I honestly believe this, and I told this to all my students, not my students, my characters that are in this project. You know what, guys? The way it's happened in the last 8 months, I've been working so hard on this project, not seeing what's happening. But if I try to step out on the outside, I'm looking from the outside. I think we became the pet project of QT Marshall. I think he's into this. He was really into this. And so now I honestly tell my talent, guys, train, cardio, ring wrestling. I know it was hard with the COVID, but try to find some places where you could roll on mats and do things and just keep yourself in the best shape of your life, and then start reopening now. And because it's going to be an opportunity that's going to be you have to be ready for things like that, and I'm losing my thought that I wanted to say, but I'm so excited at this thing. It's like amazing that all these people are going to have this chance so that's what I was going to say. So sorry. So what I wanted to say was, I honestly believe that out of the 4 talent that are going down there for 3 months, maybe 2 of them is going to make it in the big leagues. That's what I tell my talent, and I believe in it. I don't know if it's going to happen, and QT never promised me nothing, but I honestly believe the way things are going, shaping up, that 2 of my talent, if we are his pet project, he's going to, even if it's only dark matches, or if it's just something like they do before 18,000 people, or something like to show the people here that, hey, you didn't get in this contest for nothing. This was really good. And I always tell my other characters too, my participants, listen, guys, there's 4 winners, but there's a lot more than that. For 8 months now, QT Marshall's been checking every video that I have. He's been checking all the talent out. I've been doing podcasts around the world showing you guys your talent. You may get a call from Vancouver one day in Montreal, because they didn't even know the organization lived in Montreal, that kind of indie operation. And they're going to say, hey, I like this guy. So they're going to call me, and I'm going to tell them, hey, the guy's going to play your fight to go to Vancouver. So I'm connecting all these indies together and stuff like that. So it's amazing. I'm passing the torch. That's what I'm doing. I'm just passing the torch.
This is a huge opportunity. And I mean, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to link the website. I encourage everyone to go and check it out, because for all the wrestlers involved, there's videos, highlight videos, there's information about them. And you have such a wide variety. You have people with different experiences in the ring. You have, different ages. You have, different personalities. It's not all just one style wrestler. I mean, for listeners who might be familiar, you've got Will Webster from RCW, you have Chad Daniels from CWE, Adam Ryder out in NEW, and Kevin Farrell, who wrestles at Sydney Steel, who's wrestled in Alberta, Manitoba.
Who's the one that has the fleur-de-lis in his back there? There's one Clay Wilson. And to say, I have all different characters, and I'm having so much fun looking at all their gimmicks and stuff like that. And I'm saying to myself, hey, these guys are as good as I was when I started. It's like I said before, they just didn't have the right contacts or being at the right place at the right time. And I think this is going to give it. But I'm having so much fun just looking at. You should see how the characters are so nice to me. It's like, they're like, hey, Jacques, this is a great opportunity. And sometimes, I just text them to encourage them on their Facebook. I put them all friends with me on Facebook, and they put something different on about wrestling. And I put flames underneath it, and I say, Wrestling Academy 2022, be ready, So I'm really there to inspire them and to coach them and stuff. So it's fun.
One thing I really like is the wide variety, because you have people with who have different strengths. You have, someone like Isaiah Bronson, who online his social media game is a next level by, the stuff he's posting and everything. I think it's fantastic. You have someone like Jody Threat, who has wrestled, in the States. She's made a name for herself on the independent scene. She's involved with something like this. I think it is an incredible opportunity, and I can't wait to see this play out.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And, I have other guys too that I'd like to bring in, not without mentioning names, but I'm thinking of some older guys there that are like 38, and 40, that they never had the opportunity, but they have the experience and they have the charisma. I'm thinking of Jeremy Prophet, one of my students for 20 years. He's been wrestling. He started with me. He's one of those who, he's the total package. Like, if you go see Jeremy Prophet and you see Jordy Taylor, who's older too, he looks a little older, but, I look at his expression, his facial expression. I'm saying, hey, there's money to be made with him. There's a lot of people like that are almost at the end of their career, but they still have a last chance. And then you got the younger ones that have only been in the business 2 years. But they're great workers. They're great, and they don't have the experience, but they have the talent, and the high flying maneuvers that are crazy, so by going, even if they don't make it to the end, because I honestly think that the person that has charisma and the high flyer and the experienced guy and the guy who the less is more, he's going to have a great chance. And a lot of people ask me sometimes, what's charisma for you, Jacques? And I always tell them the same thing. I said, charisma for me is You go in a sports bar and there's wrestling on TV and you pass in front of the screen and you look up and then you go and you sit down. Or you come into the sports bar, you go in front of TV, you look up and then you turn and then you stop. That's charisma. Because he goes to get something into you that draws you into it. And that for me is charisma. For me. So we have a lot of that in our talent. So, I'm just saying, if QT Marshall, and QT Marshall could get, like I said, it's so amazing because QT Marshall is going to be looking at the 4 winners that I'm taking down. That's another thing I have to tell you. But let me first say this, that he's going to be looking at the 4 wrestlers, 1 woman and 3 men, but he's already looked at all the others. So he may be attached to one who didn't win. And he'll get in touch with me to have them there. But what I wanted to say, what's the greatest thing about this competition, I think it's the greatest thing in the world, is I could have my favorites and I could have who I want. But the bottom line is there's 3 judges by the ring that are going to be there during the show. And they're going to vote at 40%. And then at 60%, people from around the world will be able to text by their phone and to say who they want to keep and who they want to get rid of. So I'm doing so many podcasts in Australia and London and England, everywhere in the world, in the States, that I'm not the boss. It's the people, the fans that are the boss, and that's what I think is the greatest thing.
So also, being able to perform and all of the things involved with wrestling, but also connecting with the fans and making sure that, because that's going to be so impactful with the voting, having that connection.
And it's amazing because I among the wrestling things that I'm trying to teach them and everything, that I'm outside the ring too. Like, I go further than wrestling. Like, example, I called all the talent, and and if you follow me on Facebook a little bit, you'll see I called all the talent, and I told them, hey, you got to go to your local paper and you got to go to your radio station, because this is a national contest seen around the world, and you may represent their town one day. You may be one of the famous people. So you got to go see your media and you got to tell them this. Like, hey, that's what I did. You know what I did when I started at 17 years old? I would always knock at the media's door, and I was really pissed. And I was always going there all the time. Every time I come back from a tour, I'd go, would you put that picture from Mexico? Would you put that picture from Kansas City? Would you put that picture from Knoxville? And they were always looking at me like, okay. And but every time I went to see the media, I always told them the same thing. I was a little cocky then. And I told them, I said, I appreciate you putting my picture in the paper like that. But when I'm a big star, because I'm going to be a star, and when I'm a big star, I know you newspaper, you do a lot of charity events in the summer with baseball games and in the winter hockey games. And sometimes you use celebrities from boxing, from wrestling, from singing. And I'll be there for you for free. I'll be there. So if I become a hero one day because of you guys, you could count on me to be there for you. So I did that, and I showed that to all the talent that are with me, and so a lot of them used it. I got some TV interviews coming in from some guys and some reporters and stuff like that. I got some papers that came in, some articles in the papers. And so I'm showing them how to self-promote themselves to have the visibility. And then again, I always come back to the same thing. I was lucky in life, but I made my luck. I created my luck. I went forward and I moved and I worked and I did what I had to do. And I don't think it came from nobody. That came from me, because I remember my dad and everybody else always calling me the Kodak kid. Like always trying to put your faith in the media. But that worked for me, because the more they were seeing me, the more I was getting popular. So that's what I'm trying to teach them too, that there's not only your work in the ring and your time in the gym, there's the outside thing that you got to take care too of, the whole total package.
You have to put yourself out there. You have to get your name known, and just let the people know who you are, what you're about, and just get eyes on you. It's wrestling. That's what you should be doing.
And if you want them to vote for you, because the more votes you get, the more you're going to have a chance to stay till the end.
For people listening, how are they going to be able to watch this play out?
Thank you for asking. It's going to be on wrestling-academy.ca. Just go there. And I got to tell you this is funny for me. I always say this at the end of a podcast. I'm a music freak. I'm Simon Cowell's and Katy Perry and, The Voice and all those things. I'm just a maniac I've always liked music. And I always like the stress and the adrenaline of come on, press that button, press that button. And, I always like that. And what was your question?
I asked how they were going to be able to watch.
Yeah. Why did I say that? I wanted to bring something to you. Huh? So, yeah. That's it. My girlfriend, she put me back on track again. So it's like every time I watch The Voice and those things like that, at the end of a song, at the end of the emotion, at the end of finally they got it or they didn't, you'd always see this girl come on and say, please subscribe and press the thing and vote and, give your comment, to ring a bell. And I was always like, get out of there. Like, get out of there. I turn it off. And now I'm the one doing it. So it's like, now please subscribe and get the notification and put a comment. And that's how you'll be able to follow. You get the news of when it starts, where it starts, how you could vote. And so that's how it's going to happen.
Perfect. Now, for everyone listening, where can they find you online? If they want to reach out, maybe they want to get involved, where can they find you?
Yeah, it's wrestling-academy.ca to follow the thing. But if they want to and personally text me, I always, or talk to me, I'm on Facebook. I got a picture with my girlfriend. You'll recognize me. Look at this face here. And then and you could, I always answer to the people. I spend my days talking back to people around the world, because I've always learned one thing since I was very young, that if you're there today, it's because the people brought you there. The people, so you can't neglect them. You always got to be there. And as a matter of fact, I was told by a lot of my girlfriends during my life, like, you're taking too much time with them, or this and that. And I'm saying, no, I'm not. And and on Facebook, sometimes I say things. You could follow me. It's public, my Facebook. A lot of times I write things about my personal life and stuff. And a lot of people are saying, Jacques, don't talk about that. And I'm saying, well, why not? I talk about like that if they were in person, and something. So I'm very open on my Facebook. So I enjoy getting the comments. I enjoy getting the questions so that's just me though. I've always been like that. So they could reach me on Facebook. I got a picture with my girlfriend. So anybody who wants to talk to me, they could go ahead and contact me there.
Perfect. You know what? I hope they do. And I can't wait to see how this plays out. Jacques, I'm very excited. Thank you so much for joining me.
Blair, this was a fun podcast. You brought me back to Mexico when I was crying. You brought me back a lot of places. But it was a great podcast. Thank you for that. It was very good, Blair. Thank you so much.